Hi everyone, it's Bev from Living Fabulously, and today I wanted to talk to you about why you may want to consider going sugar-free. And when we say sugar-free, everyone goes, "Oh, I've got to give up something," and that immediately puts the brain into freeze mode. So I'd like you, as you're listening to this, is to reframe that idea. Reframe it and think and consider that perhaps eating for your health and more energy and a better mood is what you're after. So it's not about deprivation, it's actually about creating better health. And the reason for this is it's clear to me that the statistics have evidence that diabetes and gut disorders are on the rise. So there's clearly a link between what we consume in terms of the levels of sugar that we consume and our immediate health. So there are three reasons that I wanted to talk to you today. And the first one is that added sugar creates imbalance. The second one is that fructose is addictive. And the third is you need to reduce your risk for inflammation. So let's begin with the first one. So the added sugar, so I'm talking about refined sugars and sometimes the overconsumption of things like coconut sugar even, or maple syrup. So it's adding extra sugar to the foods and desserts or whatever it is that you're eating. And when we get into that overconsumption mode, what actually happens in the body is the body needs to increase insulin to cope with the volume of sugar. But what happens when it's constantly pervaded with sugar to deal with, the insulin levels actually rise, but in fact your body, the cells, how it reacts is they become resistant to insulin because insulin is meant to provide you with energy for the muscles to move. So as you've got this increased circulation of blood glucose, what happens is when you have insulin resistance, you are more likely to develop diabetes. So there's a really good medical reason why added sugar is a challenge for you and to overcome. So the second point is fructose is addictive. Many people liken the addiction to sugar to that of heroin. Now, I don't know if that's been proven scientifically, but I'm sure you know that feeling where you're just craving something sweet and it's just all consuming. There's two reasons for that. One is that there's clearly the addictive element of sugar, but the second is the dopamine hit that you get. So we often associate sugar with a lift in energy, but actually it's a lift in mood through dopamine. So let's do a little bit of biology about something like refined sugar or what's called sucrose. And you have two components of sucrose. There's 50% glucose, which is what insulin is produced to convert into energy. Then you have 50% of fructose. Now, fructose is actually taken into the liver and processed, and it's converted in the liver, and then it's expelled. But when the liver cannot keep up with the volume of fructose that's coming into the body, to safeguard and prevent you from getting other distressing symptoms, it actually lays it down as fat. Yes, as fat. So what it does is it actually lays it down in fat around often the liver, and that's within the liver. So that's where you get something called fatty liver. But this is also why you lay down fat around the belly area when you're over consuming sugar. And so that has nowhere to go. So the excess is stored. So excess fructose is stored as body fat. So the reason it's stored, it's quite interesting to the other thing, the element of addiction is that, as I mentioned, there's the two parts of the sucrose. So the first one, glucose, the body is designed to work with glucose, and so there's another hormone that's released called leptin that says, you've had enough now, I'm full, thanks very much. There is no such thing for fructose because we weren't designed that way. And so when you just keep adding the sugar, like I said earlier, you can develop insulin resistance, but you can also develop this problem where you've got the fructose intolerance. So your body becomes intolerant to fructose. So it means you don't break down that sugar at any point in time. And I think that's a longer term health problem. But just from the addiction point of view, this is why it happens, is because it feels like a dopamine hit. And so obviously when people go sugar-free, they feel challenged by that addictive nature of sugar. And the third reason is to reduce risk for inflammation. So a number of digestive disorders and conditions are related to the overconsumption of sugar, one of them being candida. So candida is an overgrowth of yeast in the bowel, and what happens is you get very similar symptoms to other things that I've spoken about, like gluten intolerance or sensitivity. So sometimes it can be a sensitivity to the sugars in gluten, which is the fructose element of the gluten products, or it can actually simply be the sugars that you're consuming, so added sugar to your diet. And so the reason for reducing inflammation is because it leads to other problems in the body. So if you start with just the gut, with the irritable bowel syndrome or other digestive disorders, leaky gut syndrome, all of those type of things start to develop. So if you can reduce sugar intake, so we've talked about, not only insulin resistance, fructose intolerance, but if you can reduce sugar and improve your gut health, you're going to have more energy and you're going to improve your mood over time. So that's really key, I think, to understand that there are very sound reasons, and I'm only sharing 3 of them with you right now. So just to recap, the 3 are, 1 is that added sugar creates imbalance in the body. Number 2 is that fructose is addictive. And number 3 is you need to reduce your risk for inflammation. So I hope you found that helpful, and please put your questions in the comments and I will do my best to answer those satisfactorily for you. So that's all for now. So bye from me.